Title of the talk is Powering the Future, Generative and Agentic AI in the Energy Industry. And we are closer to the development part. They are doing most of the time the implementation. So we like to know how AI is used for them to make the energy industry more powerful, more efficient. All right. So let's give our speaker a warm welcome. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay? That's good. Okay, perfect. Hey, I'm thrilled to be here. Been in the industry for 2 decades, mostly in data and AI. I would say joined PPL early this year as head of data and AI, so kind of taking the company through the transformation. You're going to hear the talk about some of the work that we are trying to do, talk about where technology is moving, so that might be helpful for you as you think about where agentic AI, and especially with generative AI coming out, like all of the new stuff that we are thinking from an energy perspective, and definitely want to keep this interactive. So if you have any questions, ask me the question. We also can have questions at the end. To start off, let me go to the next one. So hopefully you guys know PPL. It's a major utilities player. We operate in 3 states. It's a 100-plus-year-old company. It's funny because some of the technology you're going to hear or areas we're looking at, it doesn't sound like a 100-year-old utility company. We are looking like, how do we use the new technology, new stack, especially with AI? How do we start to drive the organization towards the future? How do we help the organization from the energy demand that's coming out, especially from a utilities perspective? How do we help them out from an organization standpoint? The company is headquartered in Allentown, Pennsylvania, but it operates in 3 states, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Rhode Island. 3.6 million customers. I think the biggest area that we're trying to look for, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think we can hear you better if the mic is on your lapel.
Oh. Is it better now? A little higher. Is it better now? I can use the standalone mic too, it's easier. Yeah, I can use this. Is it better now? All right, fine. Perfect. Is it better? Yeah. All right, perfect. Yeah, so as I was saying, I think the vision of the company, as it was pretty much clearly laid out, is to be the best utility in the country. And the way you can get to that point is using the right technology and stack, and that's some of the areas we'll get into. But I think you might ask the question, why AI, why Gen AI? Hopefully you are aware of all the new trends that are happening in the industry. One of the biggest things that we see for sure is there is a huge, I would say there's an availability of capability that wasn't available before, like the data centers, you have more data that's available. I think the key is the third area, which is algorithms, right? You have better algorithms, you can process on all this data that we collect. We collect a lot of sensor data all the time, and how do you collect all the sensor information and process it? And I'll get into a couple of areas, but I think at least three key areas that we are looking at is, how do we augment some of our employees to use this technology? So you're going to see some examples of that. How do we help our customers use this technology? So when they call into the call center, how does AI really help them out as part of the process? And it's almost like it's augmentation, right? Like what you perform in tasks today, can technology like AI can really kind of complement some of the work that you're doing right now. So we do a lot of work in that space. So when I started, as I mentioned early this year, one of the areas we were looking at is what does the data and AI strategy looks like? Where do we want to go as an organization? How do we help PPL to be the best utility in the country, right? So for that, we set out what are the key vision from our perspective, and as well as what are the key pillars we need to think through, right? And as I was mentioning, the technology has evolved, there's new algorithms and capabilities available. How do we leverage this AI technology to really help us out? Personally, for us, we want to be insights-driven organization. So every decision you make in the organization is driven through data and AI. So how do you get to that point But I think if you look at the key pillars, one of the key pillars we have is how do we have the right data to make the right decision? So how do we collect all this information? We have a data lake that collects all this information. How do we process this data? How do we cleanse this information and make the data available? So if I have to perform a specific task, I'm actually looking at this information, looking at the data, and I can trust the data that's behind the scene. The second one, which is key as you go into, is how do we make AI available for every employee? I mean, ChatGPT, I'm sure everyone is familiar with, and you're using it pretty heavily. How do we make that within the enterprise? How do we let the employees actually have access to AI so they can make decisions better, faster, and quicker, like things that they couldn't do before? The third, which is like, how do we transform the way the business processes work? And we'll get into some of the examples later. But one of the key areas we're looking at is, if you have a current existing business process where you do certain tasks, can I use AI to do that better and cheaper and faster? And especially if you have looked at the trend of agentic AI, unlike generative where you have a Q&A, right? You ask a question, you get an answer. Okay, now great, I got an answer, so I should do something with that. Now with generative, which you take it to the next level with agentic, you can actually take an action, or AI can take an action on your behalf, right? It can send an email, it can process some information, it can actually answer a question when customer calls our call center. So you can do a lot of that pre-processing, but also take action based on it. So how do you redesign the processes? And the last two are, how do we make sure we have a culture of AI, right? I mean, especially as these technologies are coming out, one of the key things we're looking at is how do we help the organization to use these tools and capabilities that are available? So we call it literacy. How do we internally train the employees? Like as a 100-year-old company, how do we help the organization to kind of adopt and adapt to these new technologies that are coming out? And how do we use all of this technology in a responsible way? And this is kind of a trend of what we see in the industry, and hopefully some of the areas are pretty familiar with you guys. In classical AI, where we have been in the past, right, predictive analytics, how do I use all this data to make some predictive decisions? Moving on to the generative, and I think the tipping point, personally, at least we see in the industry right now, is the whole concept of agentic AI, right? As I mentioned, it's not just about getting a Q&A or helping an AI make a better decision for me, but how do you take the action? How do you take the next step? So that way it performs the task on my behalf, right? We call it like, in the future, there's going to be employees who are going to be AI agents who will be sitting in your organization, helping you out, helping you with certain tasks that are, I would say, it's easier tasks that sometimes you feel like it's better off automation because I don't want to spend time on something like low-level stuff like that. Can I work on something more complex and something that can help the industry? So we definitely want the organization to kind of move towards those more complex tasks, but some of the easier automatable tasks, like can I use AI agent for some of that stuff? And I have an example for that. And the next evolution of this, which we're not there yet, but it's coming, right, which is the physical AI, like robotics and other areas too, right? Now, can AI actually do not just the task, but actually move around and make certain actions? So one of the areas that, at least from an energy perspective, is we do have like high power wires, like someone needs to go and perform this task. Is that something can be done through robotics? So that way we don't put people at harm's way, right? Can robotics arms and actually, can it go onto a bucket truck and actually make and take some actions based on that? So it's coming, it's not there yet, but I think that's the trend, right, in terms of the next evolution of some of this stuff. This is, I would say, the reason I have this slide is if you have question on why AI agents, like hopefully you're familiar, but otherwise it'll be a good refresher. As I mentioned, it's basically taking this next set of actions. Like how do I take an action based on that? And the way the AI agents normally work, there are 4 key steps, right? One is, we call it perception. It's able to perceive the environment, right? Like it understands what's going on. It also understands like, what do you want to do about, right? Can I do a Q&A? Can I do certain tasks? And I think the biggest thing is the third and the fourth, where it starts to understand, like it has memory in it. So with the memory, the benefits you have is you don't have to repeat yourself and say, I did this task a month back, can I come back and do the task again? It doesn't start from scratch again, right? It doesn't tell you like, okay, tell me more about your activity, because it knows it learned as part of your previous task, what are the actions you took. So it has memory built into it, so it actually starts to perform certain action. And then the biggest one is it starts to take action, but also there's something called reinforcement learning as part of it, right? Did it perform the job as good as what you wanted, right? This is where the human feedback loop comes in. You start to tell the AI agent, like, hey, did you perform the task? This is what you did right, this is what you didn't do right. So how does that loop go back so the AI agent starts to get better? One example is we always call some of the AI agents, like they start off like as a junior person, like within the company who's learning the process, understanding what needs to be done. But as they get smarter, as they understand the feedback, and this is where the human in the loop actually is a critical aspect, you start to understand how the task gets performed, right? It understands, did it perform the task as good as what you wanted? So, and then it starts to do it. One example is we are looking at how to use AI to intercept the call when it comes to a call center. We call it the call deflection. So you imagine you are in a storm and you lost power, you want to call the company. Our calls, like there's a big spike in calls, right? The number of calls coming to the call center starts to increase and there's a long wait time. So how do we avoid it? Can we use AI for certain tasks where you call and say, I'm reporting an outage? Can that call be handled through AI? Like, can it actually intercept the call, understand your billing information? Can it provide some details? It can also look at certain things like maybe you lost power in this particular location. So it can capture all this information, and behind the scene, it can actually invoke certain actions, like whether opening a ticket or sending a truck out to your house to get it repaired. So those actions are areas we are looking at it, and in terms of the AI agents, they start to perform the task, right? Not just in terms of capturing that information, but they're opening a ticket and sending a truck to your home. As we start understanding how these AI systems are performing, this is where the reinforcement learning comes in, where you start to understand, like, did it perform the task as good as it did? Did somewhere during the process it fail and you had to call and talk to a human, right? So can I start to understand? And this is where this technology is still evolving at this point of time. The whole speech-to-text, the multilingual aspect of AI agents, it can talk in multiple languages now, not just English. It also understands the empathy side of it, so it becomes a lot more empathetic. If you have used ChatGPT, I'm sure you must have used the voice feature of it. So it's taking the same feature, but expanding it from an enterprise perspective. How do you start to use it? Some examples I have on the right, but one of the interesting technology or the concept that's evolving, we call it the orchestration layer of agents, or we call it the hurdle. Internally, we call it hurdle. The way it works is a specific action is taken by a specific agent, right? An agent does a specific task. What if you can wire these agents together and perform a complete workflow, right? So how do you orchestrate between these agents, not just in terms of the call coming in, but it actually calls a different agent to go off and open a ticket. There's a third agent which is saying, oh, I just got an information that somebody lost power, so let me go see if there is a truck on route. Otherwise, let me make sure I tell the truck person to actually go and service your house. So a lot of these agents start to wire them together, and this is where you take, I would say, single-purpose agents to multi-purpose and multiple, like agentic AI as part of the workflows. As utilities, we are looking at where do we take this technology. And some of this is still work in progress, and we are looking at, over the next few years, how do we transform the organization, right, to use some of these technologies. So one of the examples is, we call it the customer experience agents, the one I went through where there is a power outage, you need to call the call center, how do you handle that through AI? The other areas we're looking at is there's a huge demand for energy, but also there is a resiliency that's needed from a grid perspective. Can I have agents that are monitoring the grid, right, at any point in time? So if there is an issue in the grid or some kind of a transformer that could go wrong, can an agent actually perceive that something is going to go wrong and actually notify, right, from a predictive analytics perspective? Can it also be something like an internal agent, like an HR agent or a finance agent that actually can process some back-end office process? So that way I don't have to go through like thousands of documents that I need to process every time I have a question, it can actually go pull me the right information as part of it. So it starts to spread out. I mean, these are just a few examples, we call it, where we are starting to explore. But the art of the possibility is huge, right? In terms of any business process you have today, can I actually start to inject AI as part of the process to do something better and faster and cheaper as part of it? And I think more efficient too, right? Because it does work 24/7. It gives you an opportunity where it can perform certain tasks that you would normally say, I missed it because I was busy with something else. It really kind of complements some of the work that you're doing as part of your organization. And I think this is where, when we started off, I mean, one of the biggest, I would say, disruption you see in the industry is the energy demand is going up, right? We call it the power for AI, like the number of data centers that are coming out. But on the flip side, internally as an energy company, we also want to use AI for power, right? So what are the areas, some of the opportunities we want to think through? So we are going through something called reinvention, where we are internally transforming the organizations to use new technology. And as part of it, we're looking at how does AI actually help do things better and faster than it did before. Some of the examples, few that I mentioned, like customer service, like how do I use AI to really help me from a call center perspective. The grid and pipelines, we are looking at how do we make the grid ops to be intelligent in terms of automating the outage response, right? Imagine you call the call center and tell them that you have an outage, but we are looking at the smart meter readings. We can kind of predict that you might have an outage because of AI can actually predict that there's some kind of oscillation, some kind of issues that are going on. So maybe you lost power or you will probably lose power. Can I proactively send a truck over or do some kind of a predictive maintenance as part of it? So we are looking at like how do we start analyzing all the sensor data that's coming out. Vegetation management is a good one because most of the times when you have storm, the reason you lose power is because a tree falls on the wire. But can actually do like, and we do that today, like how do we become the best veg management in the country, where we can start to identify the zones where we need to go trim the trees or take care of the branches because there's a potential for one of the branches to fall on the tree. Go ahead. Yeah. We do. So we have like the KPI or the OKRs, you call it. Like, what are my key performance indicators, right? Did I have a storm and did I lose power? That basically is my veg management performing the way it needs to perform. We work with EPRI, exactly. So we do work with EPRI right now. We also, and the good thing with utilities, we don't compete with other utilities, so we share a lot of data points across other utilities too. So a lot of the stuff that we do, we actually share with other utilities. We learn from others as part of it, so we're definitely trying to be better. But at the same time, we have some internal numbers we match against to say, did we have an outage because of storm? Did that become because of the issue with the trees or something else? So we start to analyze some of this information. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where the bottom right, as you can see, one of the things we are doing internally is consuming AI, right? Like Copilot is a good example. Similar to ChatGPT, we are making that available across the company, so every employee having access to AI, how they use that for performing their day-to-day job. But also from a coding perspective, we're also looking at, can I use AI to help me with some coding aspects, cleaning up. We have a lot of legacy data, or like legacy code, right? We're doing a lot of migrations to the cloud, right? We have a lot of code that people have written like 20 years back and nobody knows the source code. They don't have help information. So someone needs to go understand the code to understand how do you transform that. So a lot of that analysis is done through AI now. So they look at the existing piece of code, do some help documentation, so we can understand like what kind of transformation you need to do and what changes you need to make to the code at that point of time. Some of the other examples, as I mentioned, like predictive failures and how do you really start to use technology across areas that normally was done manually, right? So can I start to look at not just from an automation perspective, but we call it the intelligent automation side, right? The system starts to predict and perform and start to help you on certain tasks that you would normally have to have a human go in and take a look at it. So it starts to get beyond certain areas and really kind of transform as part of it. And some of the logos on the bottom, like, see, these are the companies we are closely partnering with. I mean, as I mentioned with EPRI, we do partner with a lot of other companies too in terms of how do we bring the technology in. Do we build everything? Do we kind of go into partnerships with some of the big major players like Accenture and Microsoft and others who actually build this for other utilities? So can we leverage it? Can we bring the technology in-house and start to customize some of the areas that we would have to build otherwise? So we definitely are closely partnering with a bunch of companies right now. And this is one of the areas, like, at the end of the day, your models or algorithms are as good as the data that provides that information. Because if you have bad data, your algorithm might be one of the best, but it doesn't give you the right results that you're looking at. So one of the other space, at least we are starting to explore, is how do we make sure the data is good quality data that we bring into our data lake? How do we transform the data and make it, we call it data products. So how do I create those data products across all the data capabilities we have, so that way we can actually make it easier for somebody who's analyzing this information, right? You can go pull the data product and start analyzing from a reporting or analytics perspective. So we're doing a lot of work. Technology-wise, our data lake is on the cloud, so that way we have, I'd say, we have storage where we can store a lot of this information. We are using Power BI from a reporting perspective, so that way we use all the analytics and reportings capabilities on top of these data lake that we collected. We use Snowflake, we use Databricks. So there's a lot of technology stack that we are using right now. But I think one of the key things we are exploring is how do we move into the self-service model, right? So all of this data we collected, so can anyone in the organization be able to run their own analytics and reports? So instead of you having to build like hundreds of these dashboards in the past, like, can actually start doing self-service on the fly. So we are looking at some of the AI capabilities that come bundled in with Power BI. So they call it the Copilot for Power BI. So we are looking into it. We're trying to figure out, can I use Power BI Copilot to be able to generate the report on the fly? So that way I don't have to pre-build all these reports and make them available as part of it. And I think the key thing too is this two places. One is we call producer of the data, and we are starting to see an increase in the number of locations where the data gets produced. The sensor data, we have a lot of like data coming from the poles, from the transformers and other area like the smart meters and other areas. So how do we collect all of the data into a lake, make it into a product or data product, so then it becomes a lot more consumable, either from an AI system, whether it's an agentic AI capabilities we talked about, or even from an analytics and reporting. Like, can I actually process all this information to make it faster? So a lot of work happening in this space, especially on the data product side. And data is going to be the key ingredient that is going to drive a lot of AI capabilities. So one of the areas that I wanted to share is, okay, where are we going? Like, I mean, you heard the story, why and how we are planning to do it. But what does our next few years look like? And this is where we're looking to get some of the brightest minds to come in and build some of these AI capabilities across the organization. One of the things we want to do, and this is another vision from us, is how do we become the most intelligent utility, right? Not just the utility that kind of processes this information, but be one of the most smartest way to collect, process, and manage some of the capabilities. So to get to that point, we have a roadmap of use cases we want to go after, especially from an agentic AI perspective. We started to map them out in terms of, we call it the Horizon 1, 2, and 3. Like Horizon 1 is what's going to happen over the next 6 months to a year and a half. What are the use cases we want to go after in Horizon 2? And Horizon 3 are like some of the physical AI examples I was mentioning. Like, these are great, but the technology either hasn't evolved, it's still in the research mode, or we have to still go in and build some capabilities before we get to that point. So we are looking at like how do we kind of spread out some of the use cases and areas we want to go after. How does the Horizon 2 and 3 more from a research perspective, how do we find some new capabilities that wouldn't be possible in the past? Like, can I start bringing them into Horizon 1 and Horizon 2? So definitely from our perspective, we are kind of looking at like some of the key capabilities we can drive or key innovations we can drive in this space, mapping them out in terms of the roadmap of where we want to go and work with universities and others to say, is there any new research or new area that we see in Horizon 2 and 3, things that are either in an early stage of evolution or research, like can we start identifying those capabilities and start looking at it. So definitely there is a huge opportunity, but at the same time there's a huge roadmap from our perspective of all the things we can go after and areas we can start to explore. And this is my last slide, just to kind of sum up, right? I mean, you might ask, like, okay, this is all great, like, but what are those use cases and things you're thinking about? As a utilities, and have been in organizations outside utilities too. I've been in financial organizations and in retail, in other sectors too. In utilities, it has a unique set of challenges, but a unique set of opportunities too. The amount of data we have or we are collecting is huge. Like, we can collect a lot of information, right? Whether it's the transformers, whether it's information coming from the smart meters. So we know the patterns of what kind of failures we had in the past because of storms. We are looking at leveraging AI to really start to say, can I predict a storm like 3 or 4 days in advance, so I can be better prepared when something like that happens. All the way to the point that I'm actually doing a lot of the pre-storm, during and post-storm activities, right? Can I do a lot of activities pre-storm, like cutting the right trees, cutting the right branches, just to make sure if there's a storm, there's one of those old trees doesn't fall on a wire and causes outage. Can I do activities during the storm, right? Certain things, how do I respond? Which areas do I need to go? Can I have a call center that can handle these calls, so that way we know where the outages are happening at any point in time? And there is activities you need to do post-storm, right? In terms of just the cleanup, like making sure everybody gets power restored in a quick fashion. Make sure you set up those activities so that way in the future you don't have a similar issue. So there are so many activities and so many things that happen today that can be fully or partially automated through technology, through AI. Even from a use cases perspective, there's a lot of generation-related stuff, transmission, distribution, customer service, enterprise services, which is all the back office side of the work. There's a few things we have already started to explore. I mean, the things that are bolded are either we have started looking at it, we have started working on it, or there's projects that are underway. But there are so many other areas we haven't even started, right? Things that either we are collecting data to actually process that information. We are working with certain partners to say, can I have the better algorithms to actually start predicting? If the success rate is high, can we start exploring to put that into production? So there's a lot of use cases and areas in the space. And definitely, I mean, as I said, like from a utilities perspective, this is a perfect opportunity from using technology, especially with AI, to say, how do you use some of the new innovation, whether it's in LLMs coming out, or even the small language models, right? Can I actually put AI on the edge? So that way, not all the data needs to go to the data center. Can I actually start processing at the edge next to the transformer? So as soon as there is some kind of a blip, I can immediately track it, take some corrective actions, or send information back to the home or the main parent company to say, I was not able to respond to this, can you actually do something? So we can, like, the technology is definitely evolving, and we kind of like piggybacking on some of the stuff that's coming out. This is my last slide. I'd love to keep it interactive. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
For questions, is it okay? We a few minutes.
Her first, then you next. Okay.
Age before beauty. So
Turn it on.
I don't-
Turn the mic on.
So it sounds like you are commoditizing hiring, and I'm very curious who you're going to be hiring. I know that our students, our students are very concerned as they graduate from college about whether they can get jobs. So if you are interested in hiring people with undergraduate degrees, we're going to be very excited. And we want to know what areas we're also interested for our graduate students.
No, absolutely. You guys can hear me okay, correct? Okay. So, no, definitely hiring is happening across, I would say, across the board. We are also bringing in interns next year. So I was telling Kevin that the positions just got posted today. We'll share the link out. So if you guys are interested in working in this transformation from a PPL perspective, like how does like some of these technologies and areas can be of an interest to you, but also interest to us as we explore where we can take this capability. So definitely like internships positions are getting posted. We are hiring people in other areas too. Data science, analytics, at least my team does everything from a data engineering, data science, and analytics and capabilities. So we are looking at people across the board, right? So definitely there are positions that are getting posted in the PPL website. The internship is something that we can share the link out so you guys have an information too. And it was just posted, I believe, this week, so.
Thanks. I'm interested in thinking about risk, and clearly when I hear agentic AI and power grid, that seems like kind of the poster child for something that you know, you might want to be real careful about how doing that. So I'm interested in how the company thinks about rolling things. I mean, okay, back-end financial, analytical stuff, that's great. But I thought it was interesting that your responsible and compliant logo was a gavel, which suggests, okay, let's make sure we don't get sued for whatever, you know. But anyway, I'm curious how the company thinks about how this might roll out in terms of simulations or, you know, a digital twin or something like that before you actually do it.
No, I think that's a great question, right? So one of the things we do, and we have an AI governance council that looks at every AI solution that gets implemented across the organization. Because not everything that's getting built, right, within my team, like we buy products today and those products come with AI. Is that AI performing the responsible task that you expect it to do, right? Do you have the right guardrails across the AI solution? So across the board, we look at AI from the guardrails, the monitoring, the observability as part of it. So we do look at each one of those capabilities. In addition to that, like every solution we put out, like we have a mechanism of how do we get the solutions out. The certain things from a grid, definitely those are the areas that we want to eventually get to that point. I mean, the use cases we started off is, let's explore agentic AI from the back office perspective. Can I actually use it from that purposes? Can we learn as this technology evolves, how does it interact with our rest of the systems that we have, right? So we definitely are looking into it, but compliance, governance is one of the key aspects that we look at it from an AI perspective, both from having the right guardrails, having the right observability, right? Can I observe the AI? Because one of the challenges we see, which is, I'm sure AI has always had this problem, is you implement a solution today, like things have shifted or changed over a period of time, and AI is learning. Over a period of time, you start to see the model start to drift. Like, how do you know if the model drifted from what you started with? How do you make sure every answer from an AI perspective is within the guardrails? You don't want to make AI too deterministic, right? Then you lose the value of what AI can do, because in the past, it was all rules-based, and we said rules-based engines are amazing, but now with AI, you're trying to get into the deterministic, you're trying to get away as much as you can from the deterministic side of it. But as you start to shift into the AI world, right, how you make sure you still have the flexibility, right? And that's where the controls come in. Like, are you putting the right controls? How are you putting the right guardrails? Are you measuring every answer that the AI system comes up with? And as a regulated industry, we want to track everything. Like every answer that AI comes up, we track it in the system. We go back and measure the responses it gave versus what we expected. So there's a lot of back-end tracking that happens, but there's also upfront governance that kicks in, right? In terms of how do we make sure we're doing the right checks, both from a cyber, both from our internal data science team, both from some of the infrastructure team. Like we have the right checks and balances as we go through.
Cool. Hi. So I'm really interested in kind of the rollout of these systems and how your customer base and honestly how your workforce embraces or resists AI. I'm wondering if you have any examples or any idea of like, are customers buying in? Are they embracing, dealing with agents, dealing with AI systems on their side? And same question for your employees. Do they seem to be embracing these tools, or is there any resistance that you're running into?
No, I think that's a great question, and I would add two aspects to it. One is like some of the systems we are implementing is internal systems, right? So it's for employees or for internal like folks who really use the technology. So one of the things we have done is we have rolled out something called Safe Agile across the organization. So that's how the work gets prioritized, how work gets managed, and kind of gets processed as part of it. Like what some of the use cases, the areas, it's a prioritization that happens from the business. So it's not just IT and data team actually pushing the capabilities. It's actually an ask from the business. There's a measurement from a business value perspective. So it's a two-way conversation, not one way. And is also driven from the business transformation, not just from a technology transformation. So technology is going to help you get there. It's more from the business perspective. The second aspect, we call it outcomes-based. So every capability we build and deploy has to have a specific business outcome, right? Either driving productivity, driving impact, and also helping the organization to get better at using some of this. So it's a pull versus push to a certain degree. So that helps quite a bit from a transformation aspect of it. The second one, the areas we are trying to get into is we call it the data literacy and AI literacy. Like, how does everyone understand what does technology do? I think the biggest tipping point we saw in the industry over the last 20, 30 years is like with the internet, like the whole disruption that caused as part of it, right? It was still technology driven, like moving to the cloud, getting some of the capabilities built out. And I think we call it the ChatGPT moment, almost like the iPhone moment we saw a few years back, where everyone had access to AI, right? Whether you like it or not at work, you're actually using it at home. Like everyone is embracing technology, is embracing how to use ChatGPT and capabilities like that. So there's a lot of interest, like pent-up demand from that perspective to say, hey, I can do this at home, I can do the same task. It helps me make a better choice of vacations I can take, or my trip itinerary, or my birthday planning. Can I do the same at work? Like, can I actually use some of this technology? So we are seeing a lot of that stuff too, coming from the business perspective to say, can I actually use some of this capabilities? We started to, one of the examples we're looking at is every time you do a regulatory filing, like when we go to the rate case, thousands of documents. It takes so long for people to process these thousands of documents to find the right information and basically collect that information. You can process it through the next steps. And now we are looking at, can I use AI for it, right? It can actually go through all these documents that are sitting in your SharePoint, process that information, give you quick answers. That way it gives you time back, right? You can actually go back in the evening rather than having to spend late nights. So definitely that's helping us as part of it. But change is one of the key aspects. My team is closely focusing both in terms of the literacy, helping the organization, identifying the right areas that are passionate, like instead of us being a push technology, it becomes a pull at that point.
Okay. So my question refers to like the energy consumption of AI, because you said how like you want to use AI for like energy to make it more renewable, to distribute it. So my question is, you want to use it to make it more finer, more reliable, active, and get responsive, making it give it so it can give actions. But wouldn't they use more energy in itself? So how would you is your company working to where y'all can use less energy for your AI? Because at the moment AI is burning a lot of energy as we know it, and there's overconsumption of energy at the time. So is PPL working towards something where y'all will use less or more necessarily?
You're talking about how we're using to make energy affordable to the people too, or like?
Yeah, necessarily, because like you said, you want to like more data, analyze data, finer data that would also use energy, like a consumption of energy, a wide range of it. So how are y'all working towards using energy, less,
Yeah.
but also make sure AI is
No, I think that's something that we are closely watching, right? As the energy demand grows because of data centers, how do we make sure that doesn't impact like common people, like from their energy usage? So we are looking at options, and this is where the company is partnering with organizations, so you can generate energy just for the data center and not have to impact everything else that's going on across the industry, or keeping the affordability like from that perspective, so that the energy prices don't go up. Some of the work that we are doing is going to help the consumers, right, at the same time. Like, for example, instead of like when there is a storm, like instead of having people not able to call the call center or do certain things, now you have a way to interact with the system to get certain jobs. So we are looking at affordability, or like even like efficiency, I would call it, like productivity internally, to say, can I do more with less, like from the work perspective, can I actually start to perform better jobs faster, give better responses to our consumers, right? So we're definitely looking at using AI to make energy company more efficient, right? So that way we can give you information. One of the questions we get asked is, why is my bill so high last month? What changed? So now we are giving systems that actually can answer the question faster to you, right? Can give you the information. You can make better decisions. Like, is my energy demand going up because of these areas? Like, we can actually provide better analytics back to you, whether it's the EV demand or whether because you have Tesla that you plugged in or something else. So giving better informed decisions back to the consumers is the other areas too that we're looking at. So it's on.
So you mentioned a while ago keeping up with regulations and stuff. I'm sure that you have this isn't my question. I'm sure you have a legal department. They're probably using AI to help them sort through the new laws and regulations that are coming through. You also mentioned, you didn't use the word ethics, but ethical considerations. I've been fascinated over the last 5 or 10 years by companies putting in ethics committees. In the case of Google, firing ethics committees for being critical. I'm curious, do you have an ethics committee? And my students would like to know, are you hiring for that?
It's definitely not in my department. It's in the legal department. So they do look at ethics and some of the other areas. We do it more from a tools and capabilities perspective, but we partner internally within the organization, right, with the legal team. So as I mentioned, we do have AI policy that we published internally, right? That's a document that's co-authored by my team, with the legal team, with the compliance team, with the risk team. So we have a group of organizations within the company that actually co-authored that policy to say, how do we measure AI? What are the areas we can start to roll out? How do we test if AI is working the way it needs to work? So there's a lot of that policy level discussions that happen. In addition to that, we are also looking at every use case, as I mentioned, like with the capabilities that come out. Do we have the right guardrails in place? How are we going to check the value or the efficacy of the models, right, or the capabilities that are getting rolled out? I would say we definitely are hiring in that space for sure. Like, we'll be looking for people in that space. No, but I think at the same time, as I mentioned, like a lot of these technologies, policies are evolving at this point of time and in such a fast pace. Like a year and a half back, I would say a lot of these conversations different than what you're having today, and it will change as we go into the next year. How do you manage AI on the cloud? What kind of data comes into the systems? It's funny, like I was having some conversations with the team. The prompts you write, who owns those prompts? Is it owned by you or owned by the LLM? the output of the LLM, who owns that output of the LLM? Because you're using a service with LLM providers, like is it like, so there's a lot of those questions that are coming out in terms of ownership, how the LLMs have been trained. There's a small language models that are coming out, like how does that evolve? What changes, like, and every model is shifting and changing quite a bit, right? So a lot of questions, I would say that's beyond my knowledge, but definitely there are groups within the organization that are looking at it.
Hi, thanks for the. So I have a question about energy consumption of AI. So we know that this is moving energy consumption toward data centers, and this is increasing. So I wonder from that perspective. So how are your architecture system going to change, like the power system going to change, and how are you going to, manage this increase? Do you see opportunities to optimize, the energy consumption between data centers, your company, the customer side, and so what can we do from that perspective?
Yeah, I've been following the industry too, right? There's a lot of new, more efficient data centers coming out, right? Both from the way the energy that they consume, right? The clean energy that they consume. So a lot of, I would say, space where things are evolving from that perspective. We do have partnerships with companies, even from our own data centers, and even we do a lot of things on the cloud now. So we partner with companies like Microsoft and others who are looking in the same space that you're talking about. So we do use the data centers for processing AI workloads, putting our systems out there, whether it's Azure or AWS and other capabilities. So definitely this is where we do have partnerships or areas that we closely work with them. Things are getting better, especially with the demand coming up, and also you must have seen is NVIDIA and also the other chips are coming out which are much more efficient. Like so there's definitely and I would say there's an area that's fast growing at this point. And for us, it's like this is the relationships we have with some of these players, right? The partners that we work with to make sure we're looking at using the energy consumption the right way, but also how are data centers performing some of these tasks.
Questions we have?
We have a question here, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm wondering, I think maybe across the board or even for specific things such as like a chatbot or a Q&A tool, how are you guys going about testing how well the tool is working? How do you evaluate it? I think maybe I've heard from a lot of people that that's kind of an ambiguous space.
Yeah.
You're not really sure how to do it, but I'm just wondering what your perspective on it is and how you've been doing it in your own team.
No, I think that's a great question on two fronts. One is it's top of my mind right now, because as we build these systems, how are we testing the systems, right? How are we making sure systems, as I mentioned, do have the guardrails, but is the system performing within the guardrails, right? So we do two levels at this point. There's a human level of testing, like we still need to have some level of human oversight. So we do have humans actually going in and testing the systems to make sure, but the challenge with that is you can't test every scenario, especially with a system like LLM. Every answer is going to look different, right? Based on when you ask. If you ask the question today versus you ask tomorrow, like the system learns, which means the answers are going to change as part of it. So that is one of the areas we are looking at. Like there is innovation happening in this space, especially with LLM level testing. So one of the ways I've seen is you have a system doing all the tasks with LLMs, and there's an LLM that's monitoring the LLM system to make sure the answers are correct, right? So there's a little bit of an oversight LLM that's going through that process. So we do have that. We are looking at some tools in that space which do some of that work. We are working with some companies like UiPath, which does RPA level testing, but now they've evolved that to AI level testing. So we are leveraging some of those tools to say, can I use a tool like that to write some test scripts? But the answers are based on the AI level systems, right? So it actually looks at the answer and says, is it within the guardrails? Did something change? So there's a lot of pre-level testing and automation that we are trying to do. And then there is a post, right, when the systems are performing and we have the answers, right, from a user acceptance perspective. There's a human level oversight also that goes in. So it's I would say multi-tools at this point, and that is an area that is changing so fast. At least we have seen a lot of previous tools that used to be used for software testing are getting evolved to do AI level testing. So we are evaluating those tools, figuring out if we can use those tools right now. UiPath as an example is one of the tools that we are looking at. But also, we're exploring other options too, right? To say what other tools can be out there that can be used in it. There's another, hopefully you guys know this concept too, but it's called evals, is one of the fast growing area. Like every model out there, there's an evals framework that's coming out. Right? If you have OpenAI, there's an evals framework for OpenAI. So you can actually put basically you're saying, my LLM has to perform these tasks. You give it the details, and evals is actually used to basically test your models, right? To tell you the answers, if the answers are accurate or not. So a lot of that field is evolving too, right, in terms of the tools coming out from the LLM providers, but also there are other tools that do extensive end-to-end testing right now.
Okay, thank you.
Question about who's building this AI models, especially for specifically and who's building the models for like the actual power systems, the transmission, generation, and like do you have like vendors, teams? How do you do that?
We do have multiple partners and like companies we work with, including vendors, startups we are working with right now, who are kind of spread out in multiple areas because, as you know, this is a pretty vast field and different players are coming in and trying to bring new technologies into the picture. So we are partnering with multiple companies, both from startups to established ones like Accenture and Microsoft and other ones too. So it's different companies we're working with. On the customer service side, as you saw, there's a company called Quant that we are working with to build the AI voice assistant that actually can intercept a call and give you the answer. So it's kind of multiple companies that are involved from that, like both from startups, mid-size, large organizations that we are working with. We do have an AI summit that's happening in the university today. We did bring all the partners in. There's multiple booths that are out there. So there's conversations happening with a lot of players right now to actually make this, because definitely like, my team cannot build everything that's on the picture at this point. So we definitely are looking at support that we can get from other players and other partners. So.
Thank you.
Good.
So I had like almost all that. Are you like making your own models or something like that, or are you using the one? But is your perspective if you want like some part of your own models, like AI models, to be made for analysis or anything else? You say like you're using the Microsoft, like partnership with Microsoft and all of that, and using AI agents or models from them as well. So are you making your own ones as well, or in some parts, or your perspective on that?
Not at this time. Like, so we don't. I mean, we're not building LLMs, or we're not building original LLM models or small language models. But it could evolve or change in the future. But we are partnering with companies like Microsoft from OpenAI. We use Anthropic. We use pretty much every large language model that's out there. We're testing those models too to see which is the right model for the task, because not every LLM is built the same. So, and each LLM has different needs based on the use case and the type of data you bring in. So we are looking at how do we leverage different LLMs for different purposes. So, but we're not building LLMs. We're partnering with companies to actually leverage that from that perspective. But also, as this space evolves, I mean, there's almost like an LLM every few months or a few weeks now, right? So it's tough to keep up. So for us, it's like, how do you use the LLMs that's out there that can be used, both open as well as something that's coming from the partners, before we actually explore whether we need to go down the path of building it. But we do customize. I would say we do train the models or LLMs, but not like build from scratch, not the base models. It could. I mean, especially as I was showing, like some of the easier use cases, we can just go out of the box and get the right models to do it. But as we get beyond that, and we kind of come across some use cases, like maybe there is like an SLM that needs to run at the edge. Can an existing model work? Probably not. Then we will have to start to explore. But right now, there is no immediate plans at this point.
So one of the major faults and bottlenecks that we have having customers participating in any sort of was engagement. So I wonder if you see that maybe AI could become a way of improving this, so kind of having an AI agent at the customer side that take care of this type of participation in order to make the system more viable. Sorry, I thought everybody would. Anyway, so if you think that
when you say customer, like how customers use AI to basically take some of our data and like I'm just wondering.
let's say
Yeah.
like so now things are relatively passive, or maybe you have fixed prices or something. But do you think AI could act on behalf of the user in order to make better the science of this type of system?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, are we doing it right now? Probably in some areas, but not extensively. But I agree, right? That would change the behaviors. I mean, one of the examples that we have already started to see, I mean, as a personal user, you plug in Tesla, when do you charge it, right? Is it a specific time where the cost is low rather than charge it any time? So, like, you can actually, like, as a consumer, you can make better decisions as part of it. We have the concept called meet the customer where they are in the journey. Like, imagine you have a mobile phone and we have a PPL app, right, that can actually give you the same information, like can actually give you the data points and things, right, so that way you don't have to come into our website or interact. Maybe there's a push notification of there is an outage coming your way. We are looking at how do we get better at predicting the storm models. I mean, you must have seen the number of storms have actually increased over the last few years. That impacts the grid, that impacts the outages. Personally, from our perspective, we are saying like, hey, can I actually start to provide you information to say, you are on the path and there is a potential for outage. Like, can I actually provide you some information that way you can plan, right? You can do certain tasks. So definitely there is an opportunity to do both sides, like not just us providing you information, but from a consumer perspective, they can take some proactive actions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions?
Do you think the current large language model is already good enough for your purpose? For example, you mentioned agentic AI or some physics AI. Do you think we still need even better models, or you think we only need to use the current model and develop something else to meet our purpose?
I mean, if you ask me from a personal perspective, I think the models are good enough. Like, I don't know if you need to, I mean, some of the use cases we are exploring, the models that are out there are good enough for task at this point. Certain areas that are improving, and I feel like, especially from an enterprise perspective, they will continue to get better, is on the performance side, right? Like, if you enter a question in ChatGPT and it gives you an answer in like 10 seconds, like, you're fine. But would a consumer on the phone be fine waiting 10 seconds to get an answer? So how do you decrease, like, how do you speed up the process, or how fast the answers come out? Streaming is a good example. Like, LLMs didn't have streaming before. Now they have streaming. So that way you're not waiting for the answer, but the answer starts to show up immediately, right? There's certain parts. So definitely, I think the models will continue to get better, right? I think that's just the evolution of how the models are going to be. One area that personally I'm passionate about is the small language models for specific tasks, because you don't need like billions of token model, right? You can actually do the same thing with a smaller model that can actually run on an edge device, for example, or even on a mobile phone, for example. Like, so I think you're going to start to see a lot more of those type of models for, I mean, task-based models, I would call it. Like, for a specific task, what's the right model that actually can go perform that better? And like, I mean, models are getting better every year, right? Every day, every few months. So you're going to start to see certain tasks perform better with the model. The quality of responses will get better. I would say it's not like, and like the efficiency of model will start to get better too, right? The accuracy, the type of information, the context windows start to get better, which means you're not limited by how much data you feed it, but if that becomes unlimited, then you get a much better response from the LLM at that point. So I would say it's going to be both. Like, do we have good enough models that we can start to work on some of these agentic? Absolutely, right? And then there's also going to be the future of some of the new stuff that's coming out.
I see. Thank you.
Yes.